Today I'm going to take you on a tour of Suffolk, Virginia, a small town with a big footprint, 430 square miles. As we step inside the Visitors Center, we see a map of both the downtown and overview. Right outside the courthouse, we see our first historic sign announcing General Lafayette's dinner at here, the original courthouse that's now the Visitors Center. The next stop is a building called Riddick's Folly, along with a Civil War cannon. This was built by Miles Riddick in 1837 after several buildings in the town of his burnt down. He spent all $5,000 of his insurance money on this one building. People called it his folly. It still contains the original slave quarters and is very typically Southern inspired with its prominent columns out front. A very, very typical Southern home. Next stop is the Southern and Pacific train station, no longer working, but now a museum. As we continue down Main Street, we see the First Baptist Church on Main Street. Right down the street from there, we see the Methodist Church on Main Street, and just around the corner is yet another church. On this street, there's also several prominent homes. If you'll see the one in front of us, we see the giant Southern columns, along with the giant magnolia out front. And right across the street is the Historic Society in a very French-inspired building. The next stop on our tour is Cedar Hill Cemetery, home of the Confederate statue. There's also several Confederate graves in this cemetery. We'll see a sample of one of those next. And this cemetery and statue is kept up by the Daughters of the Confederacy. You'll see a small black placard at the bottom of this grave denoting a Civil War veteran. The next stop on our tour is Oak Lawn Cemetery. This is an African American cemetery that was used during segregation. We saw graves from the 1800s through the 70s and 80s. It does appear that the cemetery is not well kept, and you'll notice that the Confederate cemetery was well kept. Just a little disappointed in that. We're now back to Main Street and just wanted to point out some of the empty storefronts, which are just typical of a lot of small southern towns where their downtowns are not as robust as we've seen in the past. There's also some new thriving businesses in town that we noticed as well. As we continue our look around Main Street, we see another church, so that makes 3 on Main Street, and then the original post office, which is right across the street. It's an interesting looking building. Also of note downtown is the large high school, which is no longer in use as a high school and is now a cultural center, but very southern looking. The last few stops downtown are Prudence Hardware, a defunct savings and loan, the local Feed and Seed, which is still in business, and right next door a gun store. All of these businesses are still operational. Next, we're going to talk about Suffolk being the peanut capital of the world. A man named Amadeo Obisi came to Suffolk in the early 20th century and opened up a small company called Planters Peanuts. He came here to be closer to where the peanuts are grown. They still have a small retail store in town that's very old-fashioned, but has really good peanuts. We did stop and have a few. Next up, you're going to see the Planters Peanuts factory surrounded by their mascot, Mr. Peanut. Further down that street is also another peanut factory called Birdsong Peanuts. Our last stop in town is Peanut Park, where Dr. King gave a speech in 1963, 2 months before the I Have a Dream speech. 7,000 people attended. Next, we're going to head out of town and explore some of that 430 square miles. First stop, the Great Dismal Swamp. The Great Dismal Swamp is a huge area for wildlife here, and once was the home of some Underground Railroad folks. There's a trail called the Underground Railroad Boardwalk that leads to the Underground Railroad Pavilion. I walked out to the pavilion to look at some of the history. There's a lovely classroom setting that they have, and then on either side of the boardwalk you can see the large areas of swampland. You can see the pavilion now. They've got some different educational posters up that explore the history of the Dismal Swamp during the Civil War as a refuge for escaped slaves from the South. So this was a major stop on the Underground Railroad. Many people lived in the swamp for the duration of the war. And then since then, it has been a wildlife refuge that is used by boaters and hunters and uh, hikers, all sorts of folks. Here's the classroom setting. And if you'll notice on the classroom, there is pine pollen everywhere, another sign of the South. As we leave the Dismal Swamp, we see some agricultural scenes along with fields and farmlands. We also see a big pine stand, very typically southern, along with a red barn. We catch up with a young man on a tractor plowing, and end up our tour in Driver, a small community outside of downtown that makes up part of that 430 square miles. Our last shot is the town's water tower, typical of any southern town. I hope you enjoyed our tour of Suffolk and our southern heritage.